Michael Harrison, editor of Talkers Magazine. He's with us this morning here on WSBA. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Gary?
I am doing extremely well, and obviously this is an interesting time for talk radio because obviously the king has passed away. Some people call him the godfather of talk radio, whatever nomenclature you want to add. Rush Limbaugh has passed from the scene, and so many people are asking about who's going to replace him or what's going to replace him in terms of topics. We've had a volatile year. In case no one's noticed. And, so there's a lot of questions swirling around out there right now. How do you start to dissect those, Michael? Because I'm sure you've been asked every one of them in the last week.
Well, you dissect it by looking at the most important aspects of it. First, you said this has been an interesting time in talk radio. Has there ever been an uninteresting time in talk radio?
No, there hasn't. Yeah.
And these existential questions that are coming up, like now what, or what is talk radio going to do, or will it? I've been answering those questions for the 31 years that we've been publishing Talkers. Right. Now that the Persian Gulf War is over, what are you guys going to talk about? Or now that the O.J. Simpson trial is over, what are you guys going to talk about? Will this mark the end of talk radio? The fact of the matter is that without taking anything away from the importance of Rush Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. How will it affect your show? You're still doing your show. You're still going to be there. I don't think it's fair to make it look like all of talk radio was on Rush Limbaugh's shoulders. It's a very evolved and mature scene, and I think it will go on very well. And Rush will be part of its glorious history, and his impact will be felt. Now, as for what they're going to do, with the show, that's an interesting question, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Right, I do. Where's that going to go? Yeah.
Well, one of the plan is to keep it going.
Who gets to carry that mantle? That's going to be what's interesting to it. But that'd be like replacing John Wooden as the head coach of UCLA after he won 10 championships in a row. You wouldn't want to necessarily have that job, and there were a whole lot of coaches that stuck around for short periods of time afterward. But you mentioned something a moment ago, and it's so true. There's two things that come to mind as you were talking, Michael. Number one, that I think we are constantly trying to put our fingers on the pulse of what our particular audience is trying to look at, and what they're talking about out there. I think that's very hard right now because there's a sense that they don't want to talk about politics much anymore, and yet they're drawn like a moth to the flame to it. But by the same token, there's a lot of other stuff going on with COVID this last year, affected every one of our lives and all of that. But the second part is, and it goes hand in hand with the first, I always look at every day. It's like a buffet table that, you just come out and replenish it. You just come out and replenish it each day. And it's a matter of figuring out the right foods that are going to give you the best combination for your radio health, so to speak. Does that sound too philosophical?
Not at all. That's exactly what it is. I mean, we have an infinite options of things to talk about. And not only infinite options, infinite angles on each of the options. So it never ends in terms of how unique a talk show host can be, his or her audience can be, or take on the subjects. And that's one of the things that made Rush Limbaugh so great, was that Rush Limbaugh was always original. Not only was he interesting, and not only did he sound good, especially during his heyday, when he brought those great radio mechanics to the table, as well as, the content, the sound of the station. But Rush was always an original thinker and would approach whatever the business of the day, the news of the day was, from an angle that became talking points for other hosts who would tune in to hear what he said and then decide what their approach would be based on his influence. So the originality is key. But yeah, you can go in any direction, and quite often, you asked a provocative question. Staying in touch with your audience. What does the audience want? So much of today's media, and this is not just talk radio. This is all media, even movies, everything, are targeted to audiences that already exist with pre-existing attitudes. I call it the daily dance of affirmation. Quite often, radio programs are designed to tell people what they want to hear, and you target them as opposed to I'm a curmudgeon, I'm an independent, I'm an individual, I'm unpredictable, I'm going to go on the air and I'll attract whatever comes my way. It's completely different today than it used to be when it was that way, when audiences were attracted to unusual people on the air. Now they're attracted to people who are stereotypes of their mindset. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think the pendulum is going to swing away from that going forward, because I think that's the reason we're in such a pickle in our country right now in terms of how divided we are.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right, and that was kind of my question of what comes next, and the what comes next is, you know, the idea that are we going to get back to conversation again? Are we going to get back to listening to each other and being able to raise that level of conversation? And that, I think that's what I've been staring at a lot. I've been talking about the death of conversation in our country. I know it's not totally dead, but I mean, the idea of conversation by its very term is that you have to listen. The two groups have to listen, again, with the idea of maybe bettering a situation in the long run. Right now, we're listening, but I don't think we're hearing necessarily well. And I think for talk radio hosts, I think trying to get people to raise that other level is a peril for us, because I know, for example, I probably lost some people because I didn't, you know, go totally down the line of Donald Trump the whole way, or I said something that was a criticism, and people today see criticism as something that, oh, you must not care about any of the policies, and it's much more intricate than that, I think. And your thoughts about that?
Well, I think we have to be more. I think intricate is a key word. I think you've nailed it. You know, we have to realize that it's policies and issues that we disagree on. We shouldn't just, you know, if you're against this, that means you're against everything else that goes with that category. And we're selective. We want to hear what we want to hear, and we don't want to hear what we don't want to hear. And I'm saying that's you or everybody listening to this, but it's a general tendency right now. So we turn a deaf ear to each other, and nothing gets done. We have to overcome this problem. When you talk about having a conversation which involves listening, or our country is going to go through a very, very tough time where the polarization and the divisions are going to keep us from solving problems and being a United States of America. You have to be at least as united as you are, you know, separate in terms of points of view. Democracy and the First Amendment are very untidy affairs. You got to have a degree of balance to be able to navigate those turbulent waters, because you don't want everybody being politically correct and everybody agreeing and everybody walking in lockstep. On the other hand, you don't want everybody demonizing the other side as enemies to the point that we no longer are a nation.